Sri Lanka won the first test against England yesterday in Galle quite comfortably, but at the same time, the country lost the accolade of having the world's #1 test cricket batsman. Join me, Nadim Majid, on Sports First on Primetime News for a comprehensive report on this story and much more from the world of sport. But first, for the latest headline-making news from here at home and across the globe, we join Krishni Panditharatna and Ravi Gamage at the main news desk.
A very good evening and welcome to Primetime News on MTV Sports. I'm Ravi Gamage.
And I'm Krishna Panditharatna. We start off the news with a look at your headlines first.
President Rajapaksa says the power of the truth must be used to spread true information about the country across the world. Minister GL Peters says the government does not agree with the resolution adopted by the UNHRC in Geneva. Wildlife officials hand over their weapons and stop patrolling.
Now let's take a look at those stories in details. President Mahinda Rajapaksa says the power of the truth must be used to spread true information about the country across the world. The president made this statement at the opening ceremony of a media development center today.
The Media Development Centre, constructed on the premises of the Department of Government Information with the intention of providing facilities for the media, was declared open this morning by the President. The Department of Government Information said that a sum of 374 million rupees was spent on the construction of the 5-storey building. The Media Development Centre contains an auditorium complete with modern technological equipment, a library, 2 study halls, a computer unit, a museum and a chamber with audio-visual program production facilities. The President presented awards to Dr. Lester James Peris, Elmo Gunratna, Sri R. Ratnakara, Edwin Aryadasa, Sri Lal Kodikara, Furkan B. Iftikhar, Tissa Lian Surya, Siri Tilakasiri, Surufamati Nathan, Sugutapal Senratyapa and D.F. Karikaravana for their contribution to the development of the media field.
Claymore Bombeකට වඩා භයානකයි. Claymore බෝම්බයක් වැදුනොත් මැරිලා යනවා.
The media is more dangerous than a Claymore mine. If you are hit by a Claymore mine, you will die. But through the media, you can die several times and be reborn. There are also times when instead of dying, you may be left paralyzed. Therefore, the media is very important. When a media institution which follows the Goebbels principle becomes powerful, it can cast aside personal views and even turn international politics on its head. We have seen this through the recent actions of media institutions like Channel 4.
කාලේ ක්‍රියාත්මක කරපු දේවල් වලදී අපි දැක්කා.
ප්‍රජාතන්ත්‍රවාදී මුරබල්ලා. ඒ සඳහා
There are media institutions which speak out fearlessly as the watchdogs of democracy. The media must stand against injustice and unfairness. But while standing against injustice and unfairness, it is also the responsibility of the media to stand up for ethics, the development of the people and the future of the next generation.
වෙනුවෙන් මාධ්‍ය පෙනී.
The President also expressed these views on international media.
ඉතින් ජාත්‍යන්තර මාධ්‍ය තමන්ගේ රට වෙනුවෙන් බලකඳවුරු වෙනුවෙන්
International media have grown to an extent where they can act against other nations on behalf of their own nations and power bases. I do not need to say that even the people of Sri Lanka are being made to face that unpleasant truth today. But those who love the country have a responsibility to absolve the country from these massive propaganda campaigns. We cannot be satisfied by simply responding to this propaganda. We must go beyond that and act to spread the truth about the country across the world. I believe the media has the greatest power, which is the power of the truth. I believe that you will use this facility and offer your services to the country.
ඔබේ සේවය කරනවටයි මා විශ්වාස කරනවා.
Meanwhile, President Mahinda Rajapaksa also made a special statement on Eartha, which will be marked tomorrow around the world.
අපි බලාපොරොත්තු වෙන්නේ ගහකොළ සතා සිව්පාවු.
What we are hoping for is sustainable development, including flora, fauna and this earth. The entire world is uniting to commemorate Earth Hour. Let us also unite with the rest of the world and commemorate Earth Hour so as to ensure the future generation will have power and energy. Let us protect the future generation's right to this earth.
මේ මිහිකති උරුමය මතු පරපුරට රැකදෙමු.
Speaking in Parliament today, Minister of External Affairs Professor G.L. Peiris said that the statements made by him pertaining to foreign policy reflects the stance of the government. He made this remark in response to a question raised by the opposition that various government ministers expressed different views about the US-sponsored resolution in Geneva. Meanwhile, a parliamentary debate is scheduled to take place on Tuesday and Wednesday about the resolution adopted in Geneva.
What we need is to present the reality before the country in this regard. The Minister of External Affairs presents the government's stance with regard to the country's foreign policy. We took an initial decision where we will not express our consent with regard to this resolution under any circumstances. We will not be obliged to this resolution regardless of the number of votes obtained for and against. If we stick to this stance, the country can be protected. This council has been politicized. This is not a council that has been established to ensure justice.
He clearly stated in newspapers that this needs to be taken up in October. The Minister of External Affairs should have been the head of the delegation. However, it was Minister of Plantations Mahinda Samarasinghe who became the head of this delegation. What did he go and say? The Minister of External Affairs wanted this to be taken up in October. However, Mahinda Samarasinghe asked this to be taken up now. You could have averted this if you managed to drag this until October by implementing some of the LLRC recommendations. When he asked this to be taken up on a later day, Mahinda Samarasinghe said that this needs to be taken up now. This is the outcome of that. We would like to ask as to who is making the correct statement. Didn't you discuss this in the cabinet? Didn't the government make its stance known on this regard? Isn't the view of Minister G.L. Peiris the government's stance? I would like to ask whether it is someone else's stance.
Also in Parliament today, 6 draft bills, including the Value-Added Tax Amendment Bill, were taken up for debate in Parliament. These draft bills were tabled by Senior Minister of International Monetary Cooperation, Dr. Sarath Amanugama.
We are granting concessions for selected fields in order to ensure speedy development. Such concessions are especially given to improve the merchandising sector and increase exports and to increase the fixed income levels and to balance the country's economy. Through this, we will be able to find solutions to the balance of payments in the long run. These bills are brought forward in order to increase the country's productivity and to create competition in the production sector and to create an environment where Sri Lanka can compete with the world. This is what was stated when the President, who is also the Minister of Finance and Planning, arrived here. You should have convened a meeting and said that this needs to be passed in Parliament before the 31st of March owing to its importance. This is the consideration that has been given by the government to the statements made by the Finance Minister. Can a country forge ahead by tabling such bills at the last minute? What we want is to create competition in the country and not to grant concessions for sections such as the port that does not perform. It is suitable to grant tax concessions to institutions that make such requests by amending the Customs Ordinance, Import and Export Act and Exchange Control Act. There is control and regulation, and within that regulation there will be some concessions. I would like to warmly welcome the President to this chamber. The government is now trying to sell patriotism to the villagers, while from the back door they are bringing these acts for the benefit of foreign entrepreneurs. The government is implementing a mechanism where the foreign entrepreneurs can come to Sri Lanka and do what they wish by exploiting all our resources. The government passes these bills in Parliament and implements these programs only to enable the rich to get richer.
The Socialist People's Front says the country could move forward by implementing the recommendations in the LLRC report addressing a press briefing in Colombo yesterday. The party stated that there is no point in blaming the countries that voted in favour of the resolution on Sri Lanka at the UNHRC session in Geneva.
We are aware that attempts are being made to impose economic sanctions. There is no way that they can implement such sanctions through the UN, but the US and European countries can implement sanctions on their own. Nearly 60% of our exports go to these countries. If such sanctions are imposed, it will have a huge impact on us. We are saddened by the statements made by some individuals that we should boycott American products. If we do such things, it will only pave the way for the US to take the steps it wants. Some of the recommendations have already been implemented and some are in the process of being implemented. What does this report say about this problem? It says that it is the politicians that created this problem, that the two main parties should share the responsibility for creating this problem. So we must first learn the unlearned lessons before we learn other lessons. There are many unlearned lessons from 1956. One such unlearned lesson is that the major parties must accept responsibility for creating this problem. It is they who created the problem, aggravated the problem, and finally turned it into a war. This is one of the lessons that must be learnt. We should act in a way that enables us to learn these lessons. The GSP concession was taken off by the European Union, but we were able to face the competitive markets and sell our produce. When the US imposed sanctions on Cuba, it was the US that was hurt. Even the war in Vietnam ended because of the opposition of the American people. We ought to obtain the goodwill of the American people. We ought to obtain the goodwill of the world community and the Indian government. By implementing the LLRC recommendations in a conscientious manner, we can complete half of this journey.
Let's now take a look at the cartoon published in today's edition of the Daily Mirror newspaper, which we selected from amongst the English daily newspapers as the cartoon of the day.